Imagine you're sitting at your desk on a random Tuesday afternoon. You've been doing everything right. You've got about $45,000 tucked away in a low-cost index fund, and you finally reached that point where you don't check the balance every single day. Then you see a headline, then another. You open your brokerage app, and that $45,000 is suddenly $38,000. By the end of the week, it's $32,000. That's not just a number on a screen. That's a year of your life, a year of sacrifices, and a year of saying no to dinners out, just evaporating in a few days. Most people think they have a high risk tolerance until the red bars start appearing on the chart. It's easy to be a long-term investor when the line is going up and to the right. It's much harder when you feel like you're losing the house you haven't even bought yet. My name is Tom, and I spend way too much time thinking about the psychology of bear markets and how we react when things go south. If you're someone who feels a knot in your stomach every time the market takes a dip, consider subscribing if this video helps you find some footing. Let's break this down, because surviving a market crash isn't actually about math. It's about managing the person in the mirror. We often hear the advice, just stay the course, but that's incredibly dismissive of how humans actually function. We are wired for loss aversion. Evolutionarily, losing a week's worth of food was a death sentence, while finding an extra week's worth was just a nice bonus. Our brains treat a 20% drop in our portfolio with the same biological urgency as a predator in the bushes. Most people don't realize this, but the math of a crash is actually the easiest part to solve. The part that breaks people is the plateau of uncertainty. When the market drops, it rarely just bounces back the next morning. It lingers, it grinds, it stays low for months or even years, making you question every financial decision you've ever made. You might relate to this feeling, the sense that you're working hard for a paycheck just to pour it into a leaky bucket that keeps getting smaller. Now this is where it gets interesting. Let's look at a realistic scenario of how two different people handle a 30% market crash. Let's take Sarah. Sarah earns $75,000 a year and has managed to save $60,000. She's been aggressive, living on about $40,000 and investing the rest. When the market drops 30%, her $60,000 becomes $42,000. She feels the panic. She thinks, I've just lost $18,000. That's nearly half of my annual living expenses. Sarah decides to stop her contributions. She doesn't sell, but she waits for things to settle down. She stays in cash for the next 18 months while the market bottoms out and slowly starts to recover. Now, let's look at this Mark. Mark has the exact same $60,000 and the same $75,000 income. When his portfolio hits $42,000, he feels the same pit in his stomach. But Mark has a different mental framework. He realizes that if he liked the value of the companies he owned at $100 a share, he should love them at $70 a share. He keeps his $1.5 thousand monthly contribution going, even though it feels like throwing money into a fire. Fast forward 2 years. The market has returned to its previous peak. Sarah's $42,000 is back to $60,000. She hasn't lost money, but she has 18 months of contributions, about $27,000, sitting in a savings account earning almost nothing. Mark's original $42,000 is also back to $60,000. But his contributions during the crash were buying shares at a 30% discount. Because he kept buying while the market was on sale, his total portfolio value is now closer to $105,000. The difference isn't just the $27,000 Sarah kept in cash, it's the fact that Mark's new money did double the work. Sarah is frustrated because she feels like she wasted 2 years. Mark is ahead of his original schedule because he leaned into the discomfort. The math shows that the greatest wealth isn't made during the bull runs, it's seeded during the crashes. But we have to talk about why Sarah stopped, because her reaction is the more human one. There's a concept called anchoring. Sarah was anchored to that $60,000 figure. Once she saw it, that became her new zero. Anything less than that felt like a personal failure, rather than a natural fluctuation of an auction-driven market. Most financial advice tells you to cut the coffee to get rich. But in a market crash, coffee doesn't matter. Your ability to manage your identity matters. If you identify as a successful person based on your net worth, a crash feels like an identity crisis. You start to feel like you're losing your status or your future security. I want to challenge the idea that 6 figures solves everything. I've seen people with $500,000 in the bank panic more during a crash than someone with $5,000. Why? Because they have more to lose. The fear of losing progress becomes a cage. You hit a point where you've worked so hard to get to $100,000 or $200,000 that you become terrified of going back to 5 figures. This is the comfort trap. You become so protective of what you've built that you stop doing the very things that built it in the first place, taking calculated risks and staying consistent. Let's look at a second numerical breakdown, this time involving a higher earner who has inflated their lifestyle. Imagine James earns $150,000. He's got a $4,000 monthly mortgage and a $1,000 car payment. He has $200,000 in the market. When the crash hits and his $200,000 becomes $140,000, James doesn't just feel poorer, he feels vulnerable. Because his fixed costs are so high, he doesn't have the margin to keep investing during the dip. If he loses his job in a recession that often accompanies a market crash, he's in immediate trouble. James ends up selling $50,000 of his portfolio at the bottom just to cover his mortgage for a few months. Compare this to someone earning $80,000 with $100,000 invested, but who kept their housing costs at $1.5 thousand. This person has optionality. They can survive the crash without touching their principal. Surviving a crash isn't just about what's in your brokerage account, it's about the slack in your monthly budget. The less you need your portfolio to be at a certain number today, the more likely you are to see it grow tomorrow. We often talk about diversification like it's a magic shield. But in a real crash, everything tends to go down together. Correlations go to 1. Gold, stocks, real estate. They all take a hit because people are panicking and selling whatever they can to get cash. This leads to opportunity cost blindness. People get so focused on not losing more that they fail to see they are standing in the middle of a once-in-a-decade wealth-building event. Here's what's actually happening during those scary weeks. The market is transferring assets from the impatient to the patient. It's a brutal, cold mechanism for reallocating wealth. If you can't handle the sight of red on your screen, you are essentially paying a volatility tax to those who can. Let's talk about the business owner perspective for a moment. Suppose you run a small business making $200,000 in profit. Usually, you reinvest $50,000 back into the business and put $50,000 into the stock market. When a crash hits, your business revenue might also dip by 20%. Now you're faced with a choice. Do you pull money out of the market to save the business, or do you stop investing to keep the business afloat? Many people choose to withdraw from their long-term future to solve a short-term problem. This is where mental accounting becomes dangerous. We treat investment money and business money and emergency money as different things, but they are all just tools. The most successful people I know have a cash buffer that is entirely separate from their investments. They don't have 3 months of expenses, they have 12. Why? Not because they are afraid, but because they want to be offense-minded when everyone else is playing defense. If you have a year of cash, you don't care if the market drops 50% tomorrow. In fact, you might even find yourself hoping it does. That shift in mindset from victim of the market to buyer of the market is the ultimate goal. It's the difference between seeing a storm and seeing a chance to harvest. I want to be direct with you, a market crash will happen. Maybe not this month, maybe not this year, but it is a fundamental part of the system. It's the price of admission for the returns we want over 20 years. If you want the 7 to 10% average annual return, you have to be willing to pay the price of feeling like an idiot for a few months every few years. Most people want the prize without the price. They want the compounding, but they don't want the volatility. But you can't have one without the other. It's like wanting the view from the top of the mountain without the sweat of the climb. Let's look at a third scenario, the career risk versus market stability trade-off. Imagine you have $100,000 invested and you're considering quitting your $90,000 job to start a venture. The market crashes. Your $100,000 is now $70,000. Most people will take this as a sign to stay in the safe job. They think, I can't take a risk now, the economy is falling apart. But this is actually the plateau psychology talking. You're anchoring your career potential to a market index that has nothing to do with your individual skills. In many cases, the crash is the best time to take a career risk because the competition is hiding. Everyone else is hunkered down, trying to survive. If you have the skills and the slack in your life, you can move forward while the world is standing still. We need to talk about social comparison too. When the market is booming, everyone is a genius. Your neighbor is making 400% on some random coin, and your cousin is killing it in real estate. During a crash, the silence is deafening. The people who were loudest about their gains are suddenly nowhere to be found. This creates a false sense of isolation. You feel like you're the only one losing money while everyone else got out in time. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Almost no one actually times the top perfectly. Most people just stop talking about their finances when the numbers aren't impressive anymore. Don't let the curated silence of others make you feel like you're failing. If you're still in the game, you're winning. The biggest mistake you can make during a crash isn't buying the wrong stock. It's burnout from aggressive saving. Some people respond to a crash by trying to save even harder, cutting their lifestyle to the bone to make up for the losses. But if you do that for 2 years, you'll end up hating the process of building wealth. You'll associate investing with deprivation and stress. Wealth is a marathon, and if you sprint every time there's a hill, you're going to collapse before the finish line. It's okay to acknowledge that it sucks. It's okay to be annoyed that your net worth is lower than it was last Christmas. But don't let that annoyance turn into a destructive change in your strategy. The secret to surviving a crash is actually quite boring. It's having an automated system that doesn't care about your feelings. If your investments happen automatically on the first of every month, you don't have to make a decision when the news is screaming about a recession. You just live your life and the system does the heavy lifting. You remove the human element from the moment of maximum emotion. Think of it like this. Your future self is a different person. That person 20 years from now is looking back at you today. They aren't looking at the 20% drop in March. They aren't even going to remember it. They're only going to care about whether or not you kept the engine running. The milestone of surviving a crash isn't a dollar amount. It's the psychological shift where you realize that a market drop is a problem for today, Tom, but a gift for future Tom. When you reach that point, you've basically won the game. The math will take care of itself over time. The compound interest will do its thing. But the emotional interest, the confidence you gain by seeing a crash and not flinching, that's the real wealth. It's a superpower in a world where everyone else is panicking. I'm curious, where are you in this journey right now? Are you just starting to build that first $10,000, or are you at the stage where a 10% drop feels like a massive blow? Drop a comment and let's talk about it. It's helpful to see that we're all navigating the same psychological hurdles. If this perspective gave you a bit more peace of mind, hitting the like button helps get this message to others who might be feeling the stress right now. And if you want to keep diving into the reality of building wealth, I'd love to have you subscribe. Financial freedom isn't about the numbers on the screen. It's about the freedom from the anxiety of those numbers. Stay consistent, stay patient, and I'll see you in the next one. Would you like me to expand on how to build a crash-proof emergency fund, or perhaps dive into the specific math of buying the dip?